To order. Welcome to meeting number 101 of the House and Commons Standing Committee on Finance. And yes, members, I have verified with the clerks, we are the committee with the most meetings on the Hill. Quickly, some housekeeping for everybody. Following the motion adopted at our previous meeting, please send the clerks your initial lists of witnesses no later than this Thursday, September 28th at noon, and your final prioritized lists no later than Wednesday, October 4th by 4 p.m. for our new study on policy decisions and market forces that have led to increases in the cost of buying or renting a home in Canada. Now, pursuant to Standing Order 83.1 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, June 8, 2023, the committee is meeting to discuss the pre-budget consultations in advance of the 2024 budget. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. Pursuant to the standing orders, members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and the members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. Although this room is equipped with a powerful audio system, feedback events can occur. These can be extremely harmful to our interpreters and cause serious injuries. The most common cause of sound effect is an earpiece worn too close to a microphone. We therefore ask all participants to exercise a high degree of caution when handling the earpieces, especially when your microphone or your neighbor's microphone is turned on. In order to prevent incidents and safeguard the hearing and health of our interpreters, I invite participants to ensure that they speak into the microphone into which their headset is plugged in, and to avoid manipulating the earbuds by placing them on the table away from the microphone when they are not in use. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raised hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. We appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. In accordance with the committee's routine motion concerning connection tests for witnesses, I am informing the committee that all witnesses have been all tested, I guess, is what you're saying here, and completed and required connection tests in advance of the meeting. I would now like to welcome our witnesses with us here today. So we have Senior Advisor from Bennett Jones LLP, Mr. David Dodge. Welcome. From the Coalition for a Better Future, and we have the Honourable Anne McClellan, who is a co-chair, as well as the Honourable Lisa Raitt, co-chair. Members, just and others for your knowledge, they will only be appearing as of 4 o'clock. From 4 to 5 is when those witnesses will be with us. We also have with us Community Radio Fund of Canada, Alex Friedman, who's the Executive Director there. And from the Green Budget Coalition, Manager Andrew Van Itterson is with us, as well as Senior Advisor from the Pembina Institute, Scott McDougall, Associate Director, Government Relations from Nature United, Sean MacArthur, and National Policy Analyst from Ducks Unlimited Canada, Gia Paola. From Questrade Financial Group, Head and Policy Counsel and Government Regulatory Affairs, Tanya Woods is joining us, as well as the Chief Strategy Officer, Romit Malhotra, is with us. From the Rousseau Fadouk, we have Giselle Tassé-Goodman, who's the president there, and also Special Advisor in Government Relations, Philippe Poirier-Monette is joining us. And with that, we are going to hear opening statements from our witnesses. We are going to start with Mr. David Dodge for up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a great pleasure to be at this committee, not defending a budget as I did many times in earlier years, but to discuss one that is to come, and a very difficult one to come because of the difficult times in which we live. We're in a period of rapid and extensive structural change to which we all must adapt and to which this budget and future budgets have to address. I think we know the issues. We've got demographic change, life expectancy at age 65 is increasing, and this requires major investment in care facilities and so on, but also, and very importantly, increased saving on the part of workers because they have a much longer period after they finish work now to finance. Second, climate change. Dealing with climate change requires increased investment in adaptation to higher temperatures and more frequent storms, and a huge investment in all forms of low GHG emitting energy production and consumption in order to try reduce the GHG level. Third issue, we've got a big change in the global trade order, and adapting to a more fragmented global economy implies additional domestic investment to improve security of supply. And finally, a period of major technological change. AI and digitalization offer great hope for future productivity increases, but in the short term, require very significant increase in investment in intellectual property, digital systems, including our antiquated payment system, and in R&D. So that's what's going on, and adaptation to all four of these changes is not costless. It requires that business, households, and governments devote a larger share of their revenues to investment than they were doing before COVID. While in principle, some of this investment might be financed by borrowing, here in Canada, and indeed in almost all advanced economies, debt levels are high, savings levels are weak, so that attempting to finance all these investments by borrowing is resulting in an increase in prices and interest rates, and will continue to do so, at least over the next decade. So faced with this reality, it means that to increase investment, businesses will have to have a smaller share of their retained earnings, which they distribute to shareholders. Households will have a smaller share of their incomes to devote to current consumption, and governments will have a smaller share of their revenues to devote to the provision of current services for its citizens. This is not a pleasant prospect. Devoting a higher share of revenues to investment is never easy, but can be managed more easily if incomes are growing fast and borrowing costs are low. But unfortunately, real incomes are not growing so quickly. Indeed, on a per capita basis, they've been falling. And the cost of servicing debt has risen, and while it may come down a little from the current levels after 2024, it'll remain well above pre-COVID levels. So Canadian households are curtailing and will have to continue to curtail some current consumption in order to adapt to these structural changes. And people will look to governments for help. But governments face precisely the same issue as do households. Investment requires a greater share of revenues to facilitate adaptation to the four major structural changes I mentioned. At the same time, as charges for public debt incurred in the past can eat up ever and larger shares of revenues as interest rates rise. And new borrowing to finance additional services for households or supports for business investment will simply raise further the fraction of revenues that must be devoted to interest charges and further curtail government capacity to provide services in the future. Governments cannot borrow their way out of these difficult choices involved in the reallocation of resources in order to manage these four big structural changes. And politically difficult as it may be, over the next few years, budgets are going to need to be roughly balanced to allow for additional public investment and support for private investment, the growth of government-provided current services or transfers need to be somewhat curtailed, or alternatively, taxes on private consumption increased. However unpalatable such curtailment may be, failure to invest in adaptation would condemn Canadians to a much more unpleasant future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dodge. And now we're going to be hearing from the Coalition for a Better Future. I know I said that the Honourable Anne McClellan would be coming on a little later and the Honourable Lisa Raitt, but they are with us. Although, just bear with us, everybody. We do need to do a quick test with our interpreters. And the Honourable Lisa Raitt, if you could do that right now, if you can help us out. Just
Sure.
yeah, I think you just have to say a few words and oh, we're going to suspend, actually, to get
here.
this done. We're going to suspend members for a bit.
okay.
Yeah, okay. On that, I'm going to look to the two of you. I'm not sure if you're sharing your 5-minute opening statement. Okay, if you could start, that would be great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Anne.
Thank you, Chair. Merci, Chair, for inviting the Coalition for a Better Future to participate in the committee's pre-budget consultations. I'm here, as you've heard, virtually with my co-chair, the Honourable Lisa Raitt. The Coalition for a Better Future represents a diverse and growing group of Canadian organizations across business, labor, and civil society, working together to advocate for inclusive, sustainable economic growth. Each of our 142 members brings to the table a unique perspective, but we are united in our belief that economic growth is a necessary precondition for job creation, rising incomes, a cleaner environment, and a better quality of life. We have three key areas of focus. How can Canada win globally, grow sustainably, and how can Canadians live better? We have a scorecard of 21 internationally recognized metrics that track Canada's progress in these areas with an aspirational target for 2030. We believe we must meet the scorecard's ambitious targets if we are to generate the right kind of economic growth to see ongoing improvement in Canadians' lives. Our first report was released in March to show how Canada is doing on our 21 key indicators, such as GDP per capita and business investment in R&D. We are now tracking those numbers in preparation for our next update, which will be in Ottawa in early 2024, to which you will all be invited. Lisa, over to you for some of our key metrics.
Thank you, Anne. So the scorecard is an important tool for governments and for people in general to see where the country is going on important policy areas and basically where we need to go as well. Okay, so where are we today? Pandemic created new challenges. It disproportionately impacted lower income Canadians. Inflation is rising. Economic challenges are also growing. And as David Dodge pointed out, we have an aging population, weak business investment, and poor productivity. But our scorecard does show that we are moving in the right direction in some fronts, but we're not doing it fast enough. So as the metrics are analyzed, we remain concerned about persistent weakness, which is threatening to undermine our future prosperity. The two most important measures of living standards are output per capita, labor productivity, and equality, and we're going in the wrong direction. For example, on a per capita basis, our economy is not only stalled, it's actually contracting. Real GDP per capita has fallen 4 straight quarters, and we are producing less per person today than we did in 2018. On labor productivity, that's the amount of output generated per hour, it looks even worse. It's fallen 11 of the last 12 quarters, and the productivity numbers in the first half of the year are below what they were in the final 6 months of 2014. If things don't change, we'll soon be talking about a lost decade of productivity. The scorecard also shows business spending on research and development continuing to stagnate and lag behind our peers. But some good news. We see that businesses are slowly stepping up. For the first half of the year, non-residential business investment was up an annualized 8%, which is pretty solid growth, and it's much stronger than the economy as a whole. There's also signs of rebounds in the construction of new factories, though we're still well short of pre-pandemic levels. We really have to double down on our collective efforts to figure out ways to continue to support an upward trend in investment. Back to you, Anne.
For Canada to succeed, the conversation about business investment must include transitioning to a net zero economy. Achieving net zero by 2050 is one of the core beliefs of each of our coalition members, even though members will choose different tools by which to reach this goal. We welcome the series of tax measures in this year's budget to incentivize green investment, but the tough part is still to come. For one, the Canadian government has yet to release its legislative framework for carbon capture or its plan to provide certainty for industry around carbon pricing. Both are still in progress and are due this year. The government's pledge to streamline its regulatory approval procedures, a necessary condition to hit the climate targets, is still being developed. And we're watching closely how the government navigates the transition for our energy sector. These measures are necessary and urgently needed for businesses to have certainty, to prioritize, and to plan. We do need a long-term economic vision. As we look at ways to enhance the economy, we also at the Coalition have taken special time to think about what young people are thinking about their futures in Canada. What's interesting, ladies and gentlemen, is that young Canadians, and Lisa and I have had the opportunity to do a university tour over this past year. Young people think that Canada's doing well in terms of being an equitable society and sharing economic opportunities. They think we're moving way too slowly when it relates to meeting the climate change challenges. And unfortunately, they are not particularly positive about their own long-term economic prospects. And this is based on work that the Coalition had done for us by Nick Nanos a few months ago. So it's important, I think, and I'm sure all committee members would agree, that the thoughts, the thinking, and the aspirations of our young people are very important to our future. Lisa, over to you.
Just to conclude, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your time, it's important to understand how Indigenous Canadians' lives are impacted as well. Policies and projects are being put into place, and we need to make sure that Indigenous communities are part of the equation. And I know there's a lot of discussion in the government right now with respect to loan guarantees for Indigenous people in these large resource projects. And I would just encourage and urge people to move more quickly so that we can get to the point where the projects can go ahead and economic Indigenous reconciliation can be a real thing. We hear from all of our members that they'd like to see party lines set aside to work together and make real progress on the issues facing our country. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have at the appropriate time.
Well, thank you to both of you. You're a great tag team, and I'm sure there's going to be many questions from the members. We are going to hear now from Green Budget Coalition. I believe your manager, Andrew Van Itterson, will be speaking on behalf of the group.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for inviting the Green Budget Coalition to speak to you today. The Green Budget Coalition, active since 1999, is unique in bringing together 22 of Canada's leading environmental organizations, collectively with over 1 million members, volunteers, and supporters. The Green Budget Coalition's mission is to present an analysis of the most pressing issues regarding environmental sustainability in Canada and to present a consolidated annual set of recommendations to the federal government regarding strategic fiscal and budgetary opportunities. As the chair mentioned, I'm pleased to be joined today by three of my expert colleagues to help answer your questions from the Pembina Institute, Ducks Unlimited Canada, and Nature United. We are now in an emergency, and you've already heard reference to the importance of net zero and dealing with climate change adaptation from previous speakers. Extreme heat, floods, fires, stronger storms, ecological disruption, dramatic loss of wildlife populations, and a rapidly warming Arctic are being felt in Canada and around the world, causing widespread harm, and particularly to low-income and marginalized people. Science indicates that these and other impacts will intensify if climate change and ecosystem destruction remain unchecked. It is critical to take stronger action on the related climate and biodiversity crises to shape a world that is equitable, carbon neutral, and nature positive, and that provides secure, affordable energy for people in Canada and worldwide. The Green Budget Coalition welcomed the federal government's multi-billion-dollar investments in Budget 2023 and at COP15 in Montreal that advanced the coalition's recommendations, particularly regarding clean electricity and also Indigenous-led conservation. However, along with the imperative to use such existing funding effectively, we also need more funding. In this context, the Green Budget Coalition is featuring 5 recommendations for Budget 2024, compatible with some of the objectives that we've already heard this afternoon. And these recommendations will create jobs, enhance affordability, and support Indigenous leadership and well-being. Firstly, financing nature protection and recovery in Canada to deliver on Canada's commitment to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by fully implementing the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, investing at a scale closer to climate change that prioritizes permanent financing supporting Indigenous-led conservation, and by acting to eliminate nature harmful subsidies. Secondly, along with the increased emphasis on housing, a renovation wave for climate-resilient homes and affordable home energy, recommending that the federal government expand, complement, and coordinate existing investments and programs across all departments, and centrally deliver home upgrades to ensure impactful investments that integrate health, affordability, and adaptation targets, and accommodate the unique needs of Indigenous, northern, and remote communities. And we're recommending $24 billion over 5 years. Thirdly, advancing a zero-emissions electricity grid based on renewables. These are essential steps towards the major transformational investments required in the transmission, generation, and demand side of electricity, including remote Indigenous communities. About $26 billion over 5 years. Fourth, and supportive of that, sustainable jobs for Net Zero Canada to help some of the youth that Anne and Lisa mentioned. Scaling up investment in transition planning, job creation, and worker supports to ensure workers and communities have a smooth transition to a low-carbon economy. $12 billion over 5 years. And fifth, sustainable agriculture, helping producers in Canada be leaders in sustainable and innovative agriculture with a resilient and diversified food system. $4.5 billion over 5 years, and then $130 million per year ongoing. In the coming weeks, we will be sending you our more detailed recommendations for Budget 2024 document, which will look a lot like this. It will provide more updates, more detail, and many more recommendations supporting our submission to the committee, including on climate adaptation, net zero industrial policy, climate and biodiversity conditions on existing federal spending, and environmental justice. Implementing these recommendations would lead to dramatic progress in advancing a healthier future for people in Canada from coast to coast to coast. So I would like to thank you again for inviting the Green Budget Coalition to appear today, and we look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Van Ittersen. And now we're going to go across the table to Mr. Friedman and from the Community Radio Fund of Canada, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. In Canada, there are more than 235 community, Indigenous, and campus licensed radio stations. They're all run by Community Board. They regularly provide local news and information. In fact, they have to do so by license. There are all not-for-profit organizations, so every single dollar they receive is reinvested in the communities they serve. Recently passed amendments to the Broadcasting Act define the critical role they play in these communities by stating that they are uniquely positioned to serve smaller and remote communities. They serve different needs and circumstances of each official language community, and importantly, in this day and age, they support local journalism and strengthen the democratic process. Ces stations sont les dernières.
These stations are the last to serve rural Canada and underserved urban communities. They broadcast content in over 65 languages spoken by Canadians, including dozens of Indigenous languages. Community radio stations are the home of original Canadian music and arts.
And immediate coverage of civic news information to local communities, and as such, they really are the last line of defense against disinformation. They're critical to Canadians in times of emergencies. As we saw wildfires ravaging communities throughout BC, Nova Scotia, Quebec, the territories all summer long, community radio stations provided critical and immediate local information to Shelburne County in Nova Scotia, to Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories, and to Smithers, British Columbia, whose residents benefit from Local Journalism Initiative Reporter with funding distributed by the Community Radio Fund of Canada, just to name a few. They helped guide evacuations. They provided details on which stores were open, when the power was coming back, and most importantly, they gave people the information they needed to get home. The importance was amplified by Facebook blocking local news outlets. These stations were live streaming and on air the whole time, and in these communities, MP Bachrach, you'll know what I'm talking about, a radio receiver and batteries are part of any emergency kit. One difference between community broadcasters and commercial and public broadcasters is the funding they receive. As not-for-profits, community broadcasters don't benefit from the tax credits offered to commercial broadcasts, nor do they receive any federal operational funding like the CBC, yet they continue to play critical roles for Canadians. So we propose 3 critical priorities. The first is to continue the Local Journalism Initiative. We regularly hear about commercial broadcasters closing stations and newspapers shutting down. This year, the LGI has allowed us at the CRFC to give salaries to more than 53 stations to hire journalists to produce civic journalism for underserved communities, including more than 7 Indigenous communities. More than 450 journalists are hired annually by all administrative organizations, but the LGI is slated to end next March. The program must be renewed and enhanced. Second, we propose the Community Radio Initiative, costing less than $25 million a year, not much in the context of a federal budget, but would represent a paradigm shift for community broadcasters. That would provide key operational supports focused on labor costs and technical upgrades. The CRTC is currently conducting a review of Indigenous broadcasters, and in their initial report, the single most important element they need is operational support, and this is true of all community radio stations. La réalité des stations québécoises est différente.
The reality in Quebec is different, as their radio stations receive provincial funding. There is less reliance on volunteers, and staff receive decent salaries. The number of stations in Quebec is also much higher than in the rest of Canada, due in part to this supportive funding and other local initiatives.
Australia, for example, they provide as much as $21 million to community radio. The result is that in a country with 2/3 our population, they have nearly twice as many community radio stations. Minimal support makes a maximal difference. And finally, we're asking the government to give a portion of the advertising it previously gave to Facebook and other social media giants to Canadian community news outlets. Enough sending taxpayer dollars to Silicon Valley. We are asking the government to spend 8% of the more than $140 million advertising budget on community media. This will ensure advertising is heard and seen by Canadians and that the money goes to support our system. We're pleased to see the government withdraw those funds from Facebook after they initiated an attack on our local media, and now we're asking that this money be redirected to radio stations who continue to put local communities and reliable news first. So thank you for considering these suggestions. They will make a significant impact on Canadians' access to local news and information, and I'm more than happy to take your questions either in French or in English.
Well, thank you, Mr. Friedman. Now we'll hear from Questrade Financial Group. I believe Ms. Woods is with us via video conference. If you can start your opening statement, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members, for inviting us to appear today. I'm Tanya Woods, Head of Government and Regulatory Affairs and Policy Counsel for Questrade Financial Group. Appearing with me today is Ramit Malhotra, Questrade Financial Group's Chief Strategy Officer. So we'll be tag teaming on the comments. Ramit, over to you.
Thank you, Tanya. Mr. Chairman and committee members, Questrade Financial Group is a mission-driven company dedicated to helping Canadians become much more financially successful and secure. As one of Canada's foremost fintechs, we've enabled Canadians to take control of their finances. Our journey began in 1999, and today we have over 2,800 employees and manage over $45 billion in client assets, all of that while maintaining our commitment to affordability, ease of use, and cost effectiveness. We've expanded from an investment brokerage into other financial verticals. We've done so by building customer-centric products and making strategic acquisitions, including that of Community Trust Company, a regulated financial institution, Think Insure, a home and auto insurance brokerage, Zolo, an online real estate business, and more recently, Flexity, a point-of-sale consumer lender. Our first recommendation relates to Canada's mortgage ecosystem. Like you, we do not want to see Canadians left behind, struggling to pay their mortgages. However, the health and stability of small and mid-sized federally regulated financial institutions must be a priority to ensure a competitive marketplace with diverse service providers for Canadians' lending needs, especially those excluded or marginalized by traditional institutions. In 2023, with the introduction of various mortgage-related proposals and regulations, we've grown concerned about overlapping and conflicting government efforts. Some of these measures create unintended consequences, including administrative burdens and inefficiencies. To maintain a competitive and responsive regulated lending ecosystem, we propose the establishment of a permanent roundtable involving industry, government, and regulatory representatives. This roundtable would conduct semi-annual reviews of Canada's regulated mortgage ecosystem, considering the impact of new regulations on lenders of all sizes. It should also develop a framework to assess government proposals, ensuring they address the unique needs of small and mid-sized regulated financial institutions and avoid negative consequences. Tanya?
Thanks, Ramit. Promoting competition and maintaining stability are key goals for a healthy financial sector. In the digital era, this means that smaller, innovation-driven companies have a place from which to succeed within the existing financial services ecosystem. It also means that consumers can access all products and services in the marketplace without artificial barriers. They can gather important data to make informed decisions and be able to control the uses of their personal data. To these ends, we recommend that Budget 2024 allocate funding to the Ministry of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities to study and improve Canada's housing and real estate data ecosystem measures to ensure real estate data transparency, open access, and the promotion of sector innovation and competition are also needed. These will benefit Canadians and spur related digital ecosystems to develop across Canada to empower Canadians at every stage of their housing journey. Our third recommendation for Budget 2024 is to allocate resources and establish a clear plan for the swift implementation of a comprehensive open finance strategy so that Canada catches up with its global counterparts and delivers savings to Canadians. This strategy should ensure that by the end of 2025, Canadians can access a modernized, cost-efficient, interoperable, secure, and principles-based open financial ecosystem, enhancing their financial futures. The cornerstones of an open finance ecosystem include implementing open banking, real-time payment rails, consumer data rights and portability, and an unbiased technological framework. As Mr. Dodge observed this past June, Canada is seemingly complacent in bringing key elements of its financial system into the digital age, perhaps a result of a lack of political will, regulatory silos, and the incumbent interest entrenched in our evolving economy. Not very good at a time when budgets are stretched for both consumers and small businesses. These costs are difficult to bear and remain inequitable. As industry partners, we are committed to working with you, all of you, to fulfill the promises made over the past 9 years. The time to act is now. Ramit.
We want to acknowledge the government's delivery of the First Home Savings Account. Questrade was the first to market this product. We saw firsthand the unprecedented level of interest from younger Canadians and the desire for our related educational information. An August 23 Ledger survey found that 95% of Canadians viewed rising rental costs and housing affordability as significant issues, making them fearful about their future. Knowledge is power. Our fourth and final recommendation is that Budget 2024 allocate adequate resources to the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada so that FCAC can engage ecosystem stakeholders and co-design, promote, and increase their delivery of objective and timely financial literacy programs delivered to all Canadians. Challenging times call for ongoing efforts to support Canadians. We remain committed to working with the committee to ensure Canadians benefit from the recommendations we are providing today. Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Malhotra and Ms. Woods. And now to hear from Réseau Fadouk, we have Ms. Giselle Tassé-Goodman and Mr. Philippe Poirier-Monette.
Monsieur le Président, je vous remercie.
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament, my name is Giselle Tassé-Goodman, President of Réseau Fadouk. With me today is Philippe Poirier-Monette, who is in charge of government relations for our organization. First of all, I'd like to thank members of the committee for this invitation to present our main budget recommendations. Réseau Fadouk is a network of people aged 50 and over with over 550,000 members. Our political advocacy is centered on improving seniors' quality of life. Currently, people under 75 receiving only OAS and the GIS will have an annual income of $20,904. Seniors in this situation therefore have incomes under Canada's official poverty line, which is based on the Market Basket Measure, or MBM. This index establishes the cost of a basket of goods and services needed for bare minimum survival. For example, dental care, eye care, and drug purchases, all of which are essential expenses for seniors, are excluded from the MBM formula. Réseau Fadouk therefore recommends that the government increase the GIS by a minimum of $50 per month per senior. In the 2021 election campaign, the federal government pledged to increase this benefit by $500 a year for single seniors and by $750 for couples. 2 years later, seniors are still waiting. Réseau Fadouk would also like to point out that the 10% OAS increase offered exclusively to people aged 75 and over remains controversial. People aged 65 to 74 feel left out. Financial distress knows no age. Therefore, our organization recommends that seniors by age 65 have access to the increase. We also must address the shortcomings of the OAS indexation method. OAS is indexed to the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, whereas salaries have outpaced the CPI by approximately 1%. As a result, federal benefits will play an increasingly smaller role for retirement income replacement going forward. Our organization is calling on the government to review the method of indexing OAS to take wage growth into account. Labor shortages are also a concern. In response, Réseau Fadouk is asking the government to encourage experienced workers to extend their careers by introducing a tax credit to that effect. Albeit promised in the last federal election, this tax measure has yet to be implemented. Another unfulfilled promise relates to caregivers. The government promised to enhance the Canadian Caregiver Credit by making it a refundable, tax-free benefit. We encourage the government to go ahead with this measure. 20% of caregivers in Canada experience financial insecurity. Lastly, Réseau FADOC would like to address the issue of dental health. Approximately 1 out of 5 Canadians said that they refrain from receiving dental care because it is too costly. In the last federal budget, our organization welcomed the extension of dental care to seniors in 2023. Unfortunately, we haven't heard any news of it since. It is important that the government move quickly to implement this program and provide details of the services covered. I'd like to thank the members of the committee for listening to us. Mr. Poirier-Monette will be answering questions, and I will also be contributing. Thank you.
Madame Tassé.
Thank you, Ms. Tassé-Goodman.
Well, members, we've got many distinguished guests, witnesses here with us today. I know you all are itching to ask many, many questions. And in this first round, for all of our witnesses' understanding, you'll have up to 6 minutes to ask questions of each party. Each party will have 6 minutes to ask questions. We are starting with MP Chambers, and that'll be for 6 minutes. MP Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all our witnesses. I'd like to go on the record saying that pre-budget consultations that have this many witnesses at committee are very hard because there's so many great people ask questions. I wish each other committee would frankly take it upon themselves to dig deeper within their own remits and provide the government with some recommendations that they want to see in the budget. But I want to spend a few minutes with Governor Dodge. Governor, you mentioned number of months ago that one of the things that the government can do, in fact, you said about all the feds can do to tame inflation is to slow their spending. Do I have that about right? That was in an interview that you provided.
More or less, yeah.
Okay. Just curious, the government top-line spending is about 28% above pre-COVID levels. So forget all about the COVID pandemic spending. Annual spending this year is up about 28% versus pre-COVID levels. Does that represent a slowing of spending in your mind?
In real terms, it is up, and in real terms, it's actually appropriate that it's up. It's a question of how much and what it is spent on.
If you think that the government really only has one lever with respect to inflation, were you surprised when members of the government claimed that the government's plan to bring inflation down is working when in 1 month out of 28%, inflation dropped below the 3% target of the Bank of Canada?
This is going to take time to bring inflation down. Once we got off track, just as we know in the 70s, once we got off track, it takes time. And it takes a lot of effort on the part of the government, and it takes a lot of effort on the part of the central bank.
I appreciate that. One of the items driving inflation back up over 3% is volatility in energy prices. That's one of the key drivers. So do I have that right? You're much smarter than I am. If the government reduces the price or the taxes on the good that's partially driving inflation, and those price drops in the form of tax reductions are passed through the consumer, does it not stand to reason that that would have a lowering effect on inflation?
So you can lower a single price, right? Absolutely. By providing a subsidy or a tax, you can change a single price. And that's undoubtedly true. Can you change overall what's going on? To change overall what's going on, of course, what is important there from the government side is the balance, not a single price. And so, to the extent that the government wanted to make a more rapid contribution, a contribution to a more rapid disinflation, then a balance between revenues and expenditure. We should have had much more revenue relative to expenditure than we have had. Absolutely. Directionally, that is absolutely correct. Any single price, what you're affecting is the relative prices of different products, and that's quite a different story than trying to deal with the level as a whole.
Thank you very much. You mentioned about debt service costs as a percentage of revenue. I think you've put out about, in your mind, there's a rule of thumb about 10 cents. We were close to 10, we were approaching 10 cents in the last budget. The last budget's economic projections, most economists believed that interest rates would be lower today and through the end of this year than they were at the budget. They're actually at least 1% higher. Debt service costs, and by the way, the government is rolling over $421 billion this year of debt. Debt service costs are going to explode, not to mention the losses at the Bank of Canada. What happens when we breach that 10 cents in your mind? What do we have to think about, and what's the government have to figure out in order to bring that number back down?
Well, if you're spending 10 cents out of every tax dollar you collect on servicing past debts, that obviously leaves you less to spend on providing current goods and services. And so the problem that we collectively face now going forward is that we're going to have growth of the economy, or growth of the base revenues of government, which is going to be equal to or perhaps even less than the interest rates. And so past debt, the burden of past debt will increase year after year rather than being eroded.
Thank you very much, Governor. I believe I'm getting the hook from the chair here.
That is the time, MP Chambers. Yeah, it does go quick. So we're going over to MP Weiler, please, for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, et
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
tous les témoins.
I'm happy to have all the witnesses with us here today.
For introductions and for your submissions you've made in advance. First, I'd like to ask some questions to the Green Budget Coalition, and I'll look forward to your formal submission in due course. And particularly for Mr. McDougall, I recently read a report from the Pembina Institute that was looking at this year of profits for the oil sands, and it was showing that it's going to be the second most, if things hold, it's looking at the second most profitable year in the last decade. But in spite of that, 75% of the cash flow is going to dividends and share buybacks. And in spite of what we might be seeing on our smartphones and TVs, ironically on public transit from the Pathways Alliance, your report shows that there's actually been no new investment in emissions abatement in the oil sands. And as Canada's largest source of emissions at 28% and fastest growing, why do you think that there has not been investment to date? And what actions do you think the government should take to ensure that those companies invest in emissions abatement so that they're able to do their fair share?
Thank you for the excellent question that covered all kinds of the background information required to answer it. That's great. I'm going to start with the second question, if I may, in terms of what's going to be required, because in part it answers a little bit of the first part, because the companies have, in many cases, said that certain policies are needed to be finalized that have been proposed, such as the investment tax credit for carbon capture sequestration, or so there are some great signs that the draft legislation is out. Looks pretty good. So, fingers crossed that'll get finalized pretty soon. Also, they talk a lot about the necessity of greater certainty around carbon pricing. So often that translates as carbon contracts for difference. So things are going a little slower on that. And a lot of folks have indicated that they're holding off some investments, waiting on that legislation. Carbon pricing it offers the lion's share of incentives for low carbon and decarbonization investments in Canada. So greater certainty on that is just a huge force multiplier for the policies that Canada already has in place. I have to admit, I am not entirely convinced that those incentives are excellent and necessary to drive those, to support those investments, but I'm not entirely convinced we will see the level of voluntary investment in decarbonization that we would need. And therefore, I believe Canada's proposed cap on oil and gas sector emissions is absolutely needed. And I'm very happy to hear Prime Minister Trudeau reiterating his commitment to see that at least drafted and out in public this fall. So that's great.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Next, I'd like to turn to the Coalition for a Better Future. In your opening, Ms. McClellan, you mentioned that that youth are asking or seeing that the government needs to act quicker on climate. But I was a little surprised in reading the scorecard for the coalition, which is using the target from the Harper era of only reducing emissions by 30% by 2030. And so I was hoping you might be able to square that with this committee.
Well, our scorecard was developed 2 years ago now after a lot of conversation, especially with a number of noted environmental proponents such as Professor Stuart Elgee, who, if he hasn't appeared before your committee, may very well do so. And we believe that the targets we have set for 2030 in all areas are generally ambitious. It does not surprise, I think, Lisa, you and me in any way, that on an issue like climate change, young people in this country want ambition. And I think our coalition members, all of them, would agree that ambition is important, but we do need realistic targets that current technological knowledge will allow us, we hope, to meet. But I am in no way surprised that young people want us to go further, faster. And I think that's encouraging for all of us because they will be providing the pressure on industry, on all of you, on governments at all levels, in fact, to do more faster. But our target is one that was developed after much consultation with leading proponents and thinkers in the area, and we believe it's fair. Lisa.
I'd only add that we developed these metrics, MP, between August and October of 2021, and that was prior to any further announcements that the government had made. We've made the decision that these metrics that we put together in 21 are frozen in time because that allows us to actually measure them year on year on year on year. It doesn't mean that there's not good work being done in trying to exceed these limits, but we're just going to stick with what we have in order that we're comparing apples and apples every year.
Thank you, MP Weiler. And now to the bloc, MP Sainte-Marie, please.
Oui, merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Chair. First off, I'd like to say hi to all the witnesses today. We have an extraordinary panel this afternoon. As my colleague said, it's not because we don't have enough time to ask you all the questions we would like. That doesn't mean that we won't take all of your points of view into account for the PBC report. I remember at the time when you were governor, I was teaching economics, and it was so nice to go through and dissect all of your speeches in order to understand monetary policy. That said, I will be asking my questions to Réseau FADOC, and thank you, Ms. Tassé-Goodman, for your presentation. Mr. Poirier-Monette, you were asking that the GIS be increased by $50 a month. Ms. Tassé-Goodman said that somebody on the GIS will make less than $20,000 a year will be under the poverty line. So can you remind us of the importance of increasing the GIS by $50 a month? Yes, thank you very much for your question. We believe that GIS should at least be increased by $50 a month. We often say it. The 10% increase for people age 64 to 75. There's a 10% for those age 75 and older, and those 64 to 75 would have liked to be eligible as well. People living only with OAS and GIS and who have incomes underneath the federal government's own poverty line, this is a problem. We are simply saying that the benefits need to be increased, and we are asking the federal government to respect its promise, that is, to increase the benefit by $500 a month for single seniors and $750 a month for couples. Thank you. The government made this commitment 2 years ago. Ms. Tassé-Goodman said that it still hasn't implemented this. Given inflation, how long do you think it'll take? There are a number of promises that were made for seniors. We understand that the government can't do everything at the same time, but seniors truly care about this promise. People who live on the GIS are among the poorest in our society. They will not be making more money anytime soon. Their income is stable, and this is really the only income they have through benefits. So they are looking for the government to to make good on its promise. Yes, indeed, this is a concern given the current inflation rate. More vulnerable seniors that depend on help from the state are poor. Government made promises 2 years ago, and they haven't implemented those programs. The old age security pension was increased for seniors age 75 and older. That's good, but seniors 65 to 74 fell by the wayside. Ms. Tassé-Goodman spoke about a tax credit for encouraging experienced workers to go back to work. Can you explain a little bit more this credit? This has been, there's evidence to support this. The Conseil du Patronat du Québec held a survey pretty recently to determine what could lead experienced workers to go back onto the workforce. The survey revealed that tax incentives were at the head of the list. It would be one of the factors that would ensure that people would go back to work. Quebec created a similar tax credit, the credit for career extension. This credit is first offered for those offered for those between 60 to 65, and then after 65, it is increased. We would like to see a similar benefit at the federal level. This was a promise by the government. But also, the Conservatives made this promise in the last election. So given that both the two parties in the House of Commons want this, it'd be interesting to have it implemented. This would be good that people who have very little tax to pay would be able to benefit from it as well. Thank you. I believe the NDP also proposed it. It's good to have these kinds of suggestions, and it's good that propositions from organizations like yours are unanimous. Many seniors in my riding say that inflation is tough. If they go back to work a few days a week, they get massive clawbacks. So we can hope that this will be solved sometime soon. I would just like to ask you more questions on indexation. Thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie.
Time, but I'm sure there'll be another round. So we are going to the NDP, and I do see our permanent member here, MP Blakey, but I also see NDP MP Bachrach is joining us. So just for the 6 minutes of questions.
Mr. Chair, it was a pleasure to sit in on the presentations from the witnesses, and I do see that my colleague, Mr. Blakey, has arrived. Before he digs into the questioning, I'd love to ask a question of Mr. Friedman, since he gave a generous shout out to my home community. And of course, community radio is important right across the country, and here in Northwest BC, the folks at Smithers Community Radio, CICK, and New Hawk Radio in Bella Coola are doing some very important work, bringing local news and culture to their communities. Now, the question is around your proposal, Mr. Friedman, to dedicate a percentage of the money the federal government was giving to Facebook to provide that funding to community radio stations across the country. I wonder if you could elaborate on what that would amount to. I believe you were proposing that 8% of the portion formerly spent on Facebook ads would be redirected to community radio stations. What would that amount to? How does that compare to current federal funding for community radio stations? And what could stations like CICK in Smithers or New Hawk Radio in Bella Coola do with that increased investment in the important work of community radio?
So thank you for the question. And the total number that we're roughly estimating, so there's, by some estimates, there's about $140 million that are spent annually on advertising, particularly through, and the majority of that goes through Facebook and Google. So 8% of that would be just north of about $11 million. Currently, to your question, community radio stations, campus radio stations, and Indigenous radio stations receive next to no funding. There is the Local Journalism Initiative. Of the annual $10 million, we received one, and we're very grateful for the top-up that came from some of the COVID funding. But generally, unlike the funding allocated to public broadcasters or the tax credits for commercial broadcasters, they receive nothing. So many of these stations rely on radio bingo and on local advertising. But again, in the post-COVID era, local advertising still has continued to not rebound in the same way we would have hoped. So what would it do? Currently, many of these stations pay their station managers $20,000, $30,000 a year. That's not even living wage. To have some level of continuity would be amazing. We continue to evolve in terms of the role that we have to play in terms of how people can get access to these radio stations. Live streaming, new technologies are required to podcast, and at the same time, community radio stations, because of their role in these communities, in remote communities, must continue to stay on the airwaves. And so, technological advancements, which currently are put together with duct tape in some cases, but are critical to their ability to move forward, would be enhanced through this sort of funding. And very importantly, their ability to do critical programming to unite communities. I think of CJNU in Winnipeg, and my colleagues here on the panel know about that. This is a radio station dedicated to nostalgia broadcasting, to people who are 70s plus. And so as we speak about the measures my other colleagues on this panel talk about supporting senior citizens, having these stations to be able to create a community for these people is vital to Canadians. And so, as another one of my panelist colleagues mentioned, knowledge is power. And so to be able to transmit that knowledge and make sure that that gets to the people who need it, particularly on a local level, is vitally important. And thank you for the question.
Thanks so much, Mr. Friedman. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to my colleague, Mr. Blakey, and thank the committee for allowing me to sit in.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Bachrach, for having subbed in while I participated in debate on Bill C-56 in the chamber. I do have a question for the Green Budget Coalition. I think often in Canada, when we talk about major energy infrastructure projects, more often than not, it's a conversation about pipelines, and we know that the current federal government has invested over $30 billion in one particular pipeline. And in your proposal for the next budget, you talk about a zero emissions electricity grid based on renewables. So I wonder if you could speak to the potential for generating employment and wealth out of that kind of grid, in addition to lowering Canada's emissions.
Yes, we're happy to be talking about different infrastructure projects than pipelines in our electricity recommendation. Interregional transmission infrastructure is actually the larger piece of our recommendation around clean electricity. And clean electricity in Canada is often referred to as a major potential differentiator for attracting investment to Canada. So, I mean, not only are there the jobs associated with developing the clean electricity itself, but there are also the jobs that would go with investments, foreign direct investments, industrial investment in Canada that would leverage that clean electricity. We also think that Indigenous-led electricity projects are extremely important in Canada. There's a great opportunity, as has come up earlier already today, to enable greater Indigenous ownership in electricity or in infrastructure projects in general, electricity in particular in this case. And related to all of this, we also have a recommendation around sustainable jobs in Canada. And I mean, there's both the playing defense, but also the playing offense in the sustainable jobs that I just want to highlight, where the jobs that come with this electricity is definitely on the offense. It's creating opportunities. And then on the defense, there's also the fact that the energy transition is happening to Canada. And it will ramp up over the years. And the more that we can do to give workers and communities options to participate in that transition and not be negatively impacted by it, the better. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, MP Blakey and MP Bachrach. Members, witnesses, we are moving into our second round. Timings are a little bit different in this round, and I just want to know, I am adding 10 minutes onto our meeting today. We started a little late, and also we suspended for a few minutes. So now in this round, we have the Conservatives up. I believe it's MP Morantz for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Governor Dodge, I have a few questions really that I wanted to get your opinion on. And one of them has to do with this issue of whether or not in our current circumstances that government fiscal policy and bank monetary policy are working together. And I want to bring you back to something you said in 2002. At the Donald Gow lecture, you talked about policy coordination and cooperation. You said that inflation targets are joint targets of the bank and of the government, and that when the government changes fiscal policy, it needs to think of how these changes will affect inflation and consequently interest rates. Those were your words back then. Now, we know recently Mr. Manley has talked about his quote, which became known in the media, about pressing the gas and the brake at the same time. I wonder if you think, under the present circumstances, that the the federal government's fiscal policy is working at cross purposes to the bank's attempts with regard to quantitative tightening to try and get rid of some of the bonds that they had to acquire, and the increasing of interest rates.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd use the word cross purposes. All I would say is that it's not providing additional disinflationary pressure at the moment. And I think that is correct, although in very strict measurement terms, because the deficit actually has been coming down, this year is less bad than last year, if you will.
I suppose that's something. But the reality is we saw new spending announced in the spring of about $60 billion at the same time that the bank is trying to get inflation under control. You yourself said, I think, recently that unless inflation gets under control within the next, I think, 18 months, you said, that we're going to be in for a return to, use the words, pretty awful era between the 1970s and 80s, characterized by a lack of pricing predictability and social upheaval. Do you think that, I know you just said that a couple months ago, but are you concerned that, in your words, that the federal government has not provided any disinflationary incentive because of its spending, that we're not going to get there and that we will be in for a pretty awful era?
Once you lose control, and once people feel that inflation is not in control, then it actually requires much more effort to keep it down or to get it back than when people have confidence. And so I think it's absolutely true that at the moment, the level of confidence, certainly the level of confidence in financial markets, that we have things fully under control, is not there. And therefore, there's a term premium on interest rates because there's a worry that we will not be at 2% again. And so the bank is pursuing a policy to try provide a degree of restraint. As I said, the government is
listening to David Dodge committee here.
Yeah, if you could mute, please.
Mr.
Thanks.
Chair, given how
Yeah,
precious
we'll add a few
each
seconds, but
second
you've
is,
got
I appreciate
about
it if you
45 seconds or so.
Thank you. Governor, just one other quick thing. You said that budgets will need to be roughly balanced in your opening remarks. Do you have any confidence that this government is in any position to do that? They promised to balance the budget by 2019, and you know that in the fall economic statement they had promised a surplus in 27-28 of $4.5 billion, and then in the spring budget they completely reversed that, forecasting a $14 billion deficit in 27-28. How can anyone have any confidence that they're gonna be able to take your advice?
I don't think any government has an easy time in balancing the budget. Doesn't matter what government it is. It doesn't matter when it is. That is always true. But this is particularly difficult at the moment, as I tried to point out in my opening remarks, because governments need to make very large investments, and they need to provide room for the private sector to make very large investments. And that's very difficult to do when you have to continue to strike a balance. Because what it means is that the other items which are important have to get less. And so that is the terrible job, and I use those words advisedly, the terrible job of governing is that you have to make the choices then of how you how you strike that balance. It's not easy.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. MP Morantz. Now over to the Liberals, MP Zarowitz.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank all of our excellent witnesses today. And I, too, have, honestly, hours of questions, but only 5 minutes. I just want to mention very quickly to Mr. Friedman, read your recommendations, fully agree with all of them. Thank you. Local media is critical. I think we need to do far more. I think we're all struggling what that is, but appreciate your recommendations. Questrade, you've made some very thoughtful recommendations. I'm particularly partial to open banking. I know that there are countries like Australia that's on version 2, 3, 4. And I know that we are trying hard to get to version 1, and I think it's critical for us to do so. I'll direct my first question to Mr. Dodge, and then I'll ask Ms. McLennan to follow on it. Mr. Dodge, you did a great job of talking about a lot of the global shifts that are happening right now, and just the very unique situation and that we're in right now. I'm a very big supporter of finding ways to make our internal economy stronger and more resilient. And so do you agree that we should be moving on eliminating interprovincial trade barriers? And if so, how do we do that? There's many who say we've studied this a long time. We're not able to move. If we can take away wine and beer, there's thousands of other things we could be moving on. How do we get started on it? And do you think it's important for us to do so?
Everywhere and always, trade barriers are bad in the sense that they raise the real cost of producing goods and services. They reduce competition. They encourage monopoly, all of which are bad for the consumer, are bad for productivity in the economy. So yes, everywhere and always pulling those barriers down is critical. Having said that, our Constitution is set up to give powers of regulation in many of the important areas to the provinces. And to the extent those provinces individually want to exercise those powers in a way that creates barriers, it is very, very difficult. And historically, I've got to say, ever since Justice Haldane and the JCPC back in the 1890s, the federal power to regulate trade and maintain that balance has been eroded over time. The trade and commerce power, which initially the Fathers of Confederation viewed as being a very powerful transcendental power, has been eroded by our courts. And so we have ourselves to blame for it, but it's not something that the federal government alone can deal with, because the regulatory powers that create the barriers are provincial powers.
Ms. McLennan, how would we go about eliminating interprovincial trade barriers given the challenges that Mr. Dodge just spoke to?
First, let me say that Mr. Dodge should be teaching constitutional law somewhere, as I did for many years. Good job, David, on the trade and commerce power. Look, I think it's fair to say that wherever Lisa and I go, and when we talk to our members, one of the things we hear is the importance of reducing interprovincial trade barriers. David may have a better estimate than I do, but it's at least $3 billion, if not more, dollars annually we're just leaving on the table in relation to interprovincial trade barriers. David is right that actually these trade barriers emanate from the provinces. And I do think that you've seen some progress. I am sitting here, my home province in Edmonton, Alberta, and certainly Alberta has made, along with Saskatchewan and Manitoba, some small progress in terms of reducing interprovincial trade barriers. But I think it requires the collaboration of the provinces, the territories, and the Government of Canada, everybody working together, in fact, identifying, and we have done this. We have done this, as you know, for decades, quite truthfully. But continuing to identify the barriers and having honest conversations about who the winners and the losers will be, because there will be some of both, how we in fact mitigate the losses for those who are identified as losers and move forward, because we hear over and over again, Canadians, let alone our members, do not understand why, as a federation, we continue to have these barriers, non-tariff barriers that get in the way of the free movement of goods and people. And yes, small steps have been made in this regard, but we have a long way to go.
Thank you. Can I do one more question?
Well, we don't have really time for questions. If you want to make a quick comment just before we move
No, I
on.
have a whole
Okay.
other question.
Okay, all right, so we're off to the block, and MP Samari, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Oui, merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Judy, for giving me that little bit of her time. Mr. Poirier-Monette, Canada is one of the worst countries with regard to the performance of its replacement rate. Can you please explain to us what the replacement rate is? And you were saying that the government needs to revise its current indexing rate for OAS from moving it to being indexed to the IPC to moving it to be indexed to salaries. Can you please explain that? Thank you for your question, Mr. Saint-Marie. We often say that for retirees to have the same quality of life after their retirement than prior to the retirement, there needs to be a replacement rate of 70%. So if you make $100,000 a year pre-retirement, then you should be making $70,000 a year post-retirement, which allows you to have a good quality of life. Canada offers multiple types of retirement supports. First of all, we have old age security. Old age security is a basic measure. Quebec has the Quebec pension plan, and Canada has the Canada pension plan. Then there are private pension plans. There's also individual savings. When it comes to public plans in Quebec and Canada, the replacement rate is approximately 40%. So you understand that there's still ways to go to get to 70%. Of that 40%, 25% comes from the CPP or the QPP, and 15% of the replacement rate comes from old age security. Old age security represents a low replacement rate with regard to people's income. What we're saying the problem is, it's that it's not for people who are currently retired. Indexing the OAS to the CPI means that there is a loss of people's purchasing power every year. The problem here is for future retirees. Currently, OAS accounts for 15% and replaces rather 15% of average salary. Wages have outpaced the CPI, so that means that people retiring in the next 20 to 40 years will have a less significant replacement rate. What we're saying is that we need to take into account the CPI, of course, but you also have to look at income increases. Because at the end of the day, the indexation rate based on the CPI will play an increasingly smaller role at the end of the day. Thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie.
MP Blakey, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. To the Green Budget Coalition, I wanted to ask, I know in your budget submission you talk about youth employment programs to build a more equitable and inclusive future for conservation. And I just wonder if you could expand a little bit on what you think some useful employment programs for youth would be, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation.
Thank you very much for that. Do you want me to start? Okay, cool. I'll jump right to it. $150 million tuition credit program over 5 years to fill a gap in skills shortages that are in part a product of inadequate youth recruitment and retention, and provide more information about sustainable jobs pathways to them. I guess that is the main one that is particularly focused on youth. I mean, they're touched in. I mean, they're impacted by a lot of the different recommendations that we've got in here. Maybe I'll just stop right there. I won't go into a lot more of them right now, but I could.
Sure. I hear that. I mean, I am curious to get a little bit more feedback. I think it is useful for the committee just to hear some of the ideas that you may have in terms of how to do that. But I'm also interested to hear you elaborate on a number of other things, like improving public transit service. I know we had seen the federal government during the pandemic provide a fair amount of operating funds for transit, but that is now gone. I think, despite the fact that the federal government moved on, transit services certainly haven't. We're continuing to see an impact on transit coming out of the pandemic, even as we know that having more Canadians feel confident in using public transit is an important part of decarbonizing our economy. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit to the role that the federal government could play in improving transit services across the country.
Happy to. Thank you. So matching the emergency funding that the provinces were given is going to be needed. So that's $750 million for the 2024-2025 period in order to start to prop up public transit systems. $3 billion per year in 2024-2025 for major capital projects as well, plus $1.5 billion per year ongoing for additional permanent core funding, divided across major central capital projects, as well as create a per-ride subsidy until we can start to bring back ridership levels.
MP Blaikie, thank you. Now we're going to MP Lawrence, I believe, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses, both in person and virtual, for appearing today. Ottawa's never in a shortage of crises, but I believe that there's one that actually isn't getting enough talk, and you'll hear actually agreement, I think, across the aisle, across from all the parties. We are in a productivity crisis. And we are starting to see the fruit being born of that, as our GDP per capita, as Ms. Ray talked about, is actually contracting. Mr. Dodge, you've written about, Governor Dodge, you've written about this extensively. And I was wondering if you might comment on whether you would agree that Canada is in a productivity crisis, or at least that we're moving towards one.
Yes.
Well, I'm not accustomed to those type of answers, especially from former politicians, but I do appreciate that and your frankness and honesty. And so, when we look at some of the issues, we have very low capital investment. In fact, near the bottom of the OECD, and actually we're predicted by the OECD to have the lowest capital investment in the coming future. I'm wondering, Governor Dodge, if you might be able to share a couple of things you might want to see in the upcoming budget that would help increase capital investment in our country.
Yeah, this is a long-standing problem we've had in this country of low capital investment, both in terms of machinery and equipment per worker, where we slide down relative to other countries, in particular the United States, and in what you might call R&D side, the innovation of different ways of doing things. And on both of those measures, we've done historically not very well. And since about 2015, we've actually been doing quite badly because we've lost the heavy investment in the oil and gas industry that we had for roughly the first 15 years of this century. So that in aggregate, we're doing really poorly. So, and in part that's due to changing prices, changing structures of demand. But where have done historically badly and continue to do badly is investing in new IP and investing in the most modern equipment to boost the productivity of our individual workers in both the goods sector of the economy and in the service sector of the economy. And so when I talked about having to make investment in my opening remarks, it's in those areas that we need to focus to raise productivity in those sectors. And in raising productivity, we then have the money and the ability to adjust to these changes in the world that are not helpful for Canada. The fragmentation of the global trading system is very unhelpful for us. And so we have to kind of make up, we have to do extra, if you will, to make up for the fact that as that system changes, we lose access to markets, and in some cases we'll lose access to cheap imports as well.
So part of, thank you for that. Thank you for your answer. Lots to unpack there. I want to get to one specific policy area, especially when it comes to tax incentives that will specifically focus not on consumption, but on investment. Is that something that you think could potentially help us with our lack of capital investment in Canada?
Yes, absolutely. How to go about that precisely, that's a more nuanced thing, but essentially what we need at the moment is relatively larger investment tax credits to encourage the reinvestment of retained earnings, number one. And number two, governments need revenue to do all the things that everybody's asking governments to do, right? And quite frankly, to get those revenues in a way that doesn't undermine investment, governments will have to reach back to consumption taxes. And they will have to reach back to the GST, as will the provinces, because those revenues do not undermine the incentives in the private sector to invest, nor do they undermine the incentives in the household sector to save, which is extraordinarily important. So you need both sides to operate in that way.
Thank you for that, and thank you, MP Lawrence. And now we're moving to MP Baker, please, for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much to all our panelists, and I, like the others, won't be able to ask you all questions, but I thank you very much for being here and for your time, and we'll take very careful note of your testimony and your answers to questions from colleagues. Mr. Dodge, I'm going to come back to you, if I may, and I want to start by thanking you for, one of the things I've taken away from your remarks is the importance of making sure that we're taking into account not just the government's fiscal position, so deficit or surplus or whatever the case may be, but also the fact that interest rates are higher and expected to be higher, and that imposes a cost, and we need to make a provision for that. And I think that's, I appreciate that. It's very, very sensible, and so I appreciate that. There's been a lot of conversation here at this committee over the last couple of years or so about the number one issue facing my constituents, I think most of our constituents, which is the cost of living and what's causing it to be so high. And I wanted to read there was an article I was looking at from May of last year, and where you're quoted, and it talks about some of the things that Mr. Pierre Poilievre was speaking about at the time in terms of inflation. And I want to read this to you, and then I'll ask you to comment. It says, on another Poilievre stance that cryptocurrency allows people to opt out of inflation, Dodge said, quote, he has no idea what he's talking about. You went on to say, to explain what you meant by that, he's just wrong because the issue of rising prices that you have to cope with out of your income is fundamentally at the moment a structural one. We have limitations on supply in part because of a war, in part because of COVID, in part because of ongoing features of the economy. We're all getting older. The labor force is not growing as fast. That was something that you said. You speak there to some of the reasons that you believed prices were rising. Do you still believe that? Are those still driving inflation?
Yes, they are. And that's an ongoing issue of supply, and it comes back to the issue we were all discussing earlier about productivity. Unless we can get the output per worker or the output per unit of invested capital up, then indeed we have a problem. And the first thing that happens is that prices go up. Right? Those prices go up to curb demand, to bring the demand back down into line with this rather weak capacity to produce. And so the way forward for us, and especially in this difficult period where we have all the change going on, the way forward is we have to increase the share of our national income that we devote to investment to raise that productivity. And that's just the very unfortunate fact of life that we're in. And that means in the short run, we are going to have to give up collectively some elements of consumption in order to provide the real resources, both human and physical, that are needed for the investment to raise that productivity over time. Now, technological change will help us eventually, but we have to make the investment first before we get the benefits down the line. And it's a very hard message, right? Because none of us like to give up some of our income or defer some of our income in order that we are in a good position in 2030 and 2040.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, if I could ask you quickly, I've only got about a minute left. In your quote, you mentioned the war. I presume you mean the war in Ukraine. Would you agree that the war and the blockades of food exports and the impact on energy prices, that this is having a significant impact on inflation around the world and in Canada?
Absolutely.
And how? And still. And so if Ukraine were to win the war, in other words, no longer face the blockades, control its territory, be able to export its grain, those sorts of things, would this have a positive impact on inflation?
That I can't. I just don't know. All I think that's really important to note and remember is that for 40 years, or so 30 years since the wall came down, we have had a tremendous advantage of being able to divert resources from production of war goods into production of goods and services for ordinary Canadians. So we exercised a fiscal dividend after the collapse of the Soviet, a peace dividend, sorry, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. We are unfortunately on the other side now, And indeed, you as members of Parliament are going to have to take into consideration how it is we provide Canadians with the security that we need with the current level of budget. We may have to spend more. That may, unfortunately, be one of the things.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. Thank you. And thank you, MP Baker. Members, we are moving into our third round. To get through this third round, we have to be very strict on time, and I will be. So if I cut you off, just let you know that is why. So we're starting with the Conservatives. MP Morantz, please.
Governor, just to continue on with our conversation, another paper you co-wrote in January with Mr. Aslan, you talked about one of your conclusions was that you thought there was a high risk that the government would not be able to deliver the promises it made in the 2022 budget and the fall economic statement. And you said, if anything, even more spending and borrowing might be required in order to deliver its policies. And, you know, I think it's pretty clear to me that you're basically sending a message to the government that they need to get their spending under control, while at the same time investing in infrastructure and trying to grow the economy. I get that from your opening remarks. But I'm wondering if you could comment on that particular conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, this is the unfortunate fact of life, that indeed, if you're going to deliver a service, there is a real cost to delivering that service. And some of those services that collectively we look on governments to provide, in particular, health, education, security services, the cost of actually providing those services in real terms is going up over time, right? It's very hard to deliver that promise and indeed to expand on that promise as to what you're going to deliver without devoting more revenues to it. And so it's what I was saying is that given that those things are costly and they were promised, then indeed I was very worried that the amount of revenue the government was going to have was totally insufficient to deliver on the service delivery that is promised. And that's not just this government here in Ottawa. That is a collective problem that governments are having in the provinces, in Europe, and a fortiori are having in the United States.
So, you know, in terms of the revenue question, I mean, one of the things government can do is raise taxes. Now, as Conservatives, we hate that. But do you think that that's something that is in play?
Well, I don't think anyone likes paying taxes, but the taxes are there to pay for the services that the government delivers, and to allow government on its part to make the investments in its services, in the future of its services, and at the same time to ensure that it has a tax structure that allows the private sector to make the investment it needs to make.
Like, we have a situation where government debt from Confederation to 2015 was $600 billion. 2015 to 2023, $600 billion. We had the Prime Minister and Governor Macklin saying money was essentially free, interest rates would be low forever, and they just borrowed and borrowed and borrowed, and now interest rates have gone up, which eats away at the pie that we can use to pay for services. So isn't there some blame on the government for blowing the bank?
Look, we faced a situation in March of 2020 where we really didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know what COVID was going to do and how we were going to control it. So I think you sat here in 2020 and you had to make decisions. The government had to make decisions on how to deal with it. And I think it's very hard to fault the decision at that time. We did not know at that time what we were up against. I think it's much more, your comment is much more trenchant with respect to what happened after the second half of 21, right? I think that is much more trenchant when we should have known better, although most economists on the outside, not me, but most economists on the outside thought that we would come through this relatively easy, that rates would not go up. And there were only a few of us that kept warning, quite frankly, that we were going to be into high rates.
Thank you. Thank you, MP Morantz. And now we'll hear from MP Thompson, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you to all the witnesses. It's really difficult to try to narrow down the questions in this very short period of time. But I will actually begin with Ms. McLennan and Ms. Raitt, because I want to focus on the rural economic trends, basically because I come from Newfoundland and Labrador, and obviously, you know, a very big physical space with a very small population, with a disproportionate aging population of older persons. We also have the opportunity, the economic opportunity around clean energy, wind, hydrogen, and essential or critical minerals that reside within rural aspects or rural parts of the province. We have to grow population at the same time. We don't have always the housing, the access to health care, and transportation, all those other necessities to really engage a new population to remain in the area. So we have challenges. What I'm really interested in is how we can work across municipalities, how we can engage civil societies, community sectors, and really navigate with data and with that long-term view of how it is we're going to manage this economic opportunity, but understanding that we are a rural province for the most part. All right, whoever, either of you want to chime in.
And you can go first.
No, Lisa, over to you.
Okay. I always, thank you very much for the question. I always like to say that Canada's future prosperity goes through rural communities, quite frankly, and that's a very real situation. We have been able to put what we call a rural lens on some of the scorecard metrics that we actually measure. And the importance of that is exactly what you said. In terms of making sure that we understand what's happening in rural communities. Access to broadband is one of the very largest things, but also important is access to immigration. Having enough people to be able to come into the areas in which jobs and talent are needed. And those are things that they preoccupy. We've met with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. They have lots of concerns in the area with respect to making sure that municipalities have the right tools in order to be able to look after themselves. And that's the same thing in rural Canada as well. I would just submit one thing, if I may, that on business investment, either in rural Canada or in urban Canada, we really have to do better. And a report that came across my desk today from a coalition partner actually brings it into stark contrast when, if you know, indulge me for a second here, but in 2021, U.S. firms spent 103 times more than Canadian firms did. But the U.S. GDP is only 11 times greater than Canada's GDP. When you think about it in that way, you really get that understanding that we're not doing as much as we can when it comes to business investment and R&D. And I appreciate your question on rural, and we're going to continue to make sure that we focus on the differences that we have in Canada amongst all of our municipalities and regions.
And Lisa's mentioned one important part of infrastructure, broadband. But I think infrastructure generally in rural and small town Canada, figuring out what it is communities need to sustain themselves, but also attract the immigrants, for example, that Lisa just talked about. Part of the challenge, my family live in rural Nova Scotia. They haven't had a family doctor in 15 years, right? I mean, those are the kinds of things that we are really going to have to bear down on working together as civil society and levels of government to ensure that either the human infrastructure or the physical infrastructure is available. Otherwise, young people will continue to look for their futures elsewhere, and that's obviously not good for any of us.
Thank you so much. I'm going to switch with my remaining time to Mr. Friedman. I will also say, Newfoundland and Labrador, we had 16 of the community radio programs funded, and we certainly see the community and the campus and Indigenous. So I'm very supportive of the program. But you referenced with Quebec that there's a provincial support, and I believe you said that the model or that the radios, the community radios tend to do better financially in being able to sustain themselves. Would you speak about that as if it has implications for the rest of the country, that yes, certainly federal support, but if we need to also move across provincial, territorial levels of government as well, understanding that increasingly the voice is becoming more urgent than ever, the radio voice.
Yeah.
Thank you, MP Thompson. Just Mr. Friedman, just a very quick, short answer, please.
Very quickly, yes. Provincial supports are as important as federal supports. There are some provinces that are more inclined to do so, but certainly we do need supports of any kind. And to speak to what my colleagues were just speaking about, the success that we'll see in rural Canada will be from a sense of understanding that there's community, and from radio stations and media that can represent those local communities. We will see an increase in immigration. We will see an increase of prosperity when people feel at home in these communities and feel that there's a sense of future.
MP Thompson, and now to the block for 2.5 minutes. MP Sainte-Marie, please.
Merci.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Poirier-Monette, you talked about the calls for action that you had with regard to caregivers. Caregivers play an essential role in our communities. You said that a significant percentage of caregivers are living through financial insecurity. Caregivers are in a difficult financial situation. Can you please go over that and say what the FEDUC is asking for? Thank you, Mr. Sainte-Marie, for your question. Yes. Essentially, most caregivers are women, and that's a good point to note. 20% of caregivers experience financial insecurity. They spend, on average, $7,600 caring for loved ones out of pocket. Caregivers help alleviate the burden of the public sector. If you take into account all of the efforts that they make, you would need 1.2 million additional workers. We just want the government to respect its promise and enhance the Canada Caregiver benefit to ensure that people who have very little tax to pay or no tax to pay be able to use it as well. Thank you. You said that this is another promise that you're waiting on? The Liberal Party's latest platform includes this, so caregivers are waiting for this and need it quickly. Yes, I hope that the government is listening now, because this is a social investment. Mr. Chair, with the 20 seconds I have left, I would like to wish Mr. Marantz and other Jewish members of parliament a happy Yom Kippur. There were incidents with the international visits in the House of Commons, so despite that, happy Yom Kippur.
Sainte-Marie, and now over to MP Blakey, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My question is for Ms. McClellan and Ms. Raitt. It seems to me that we're in a moment where where acceleration towards a lower carbon economy is happening. It's happening all over the world to varying degrees. Investors are interested in investing in products that have a lower carbon footprint. I know you're measuring metrics in 3 different areas, and we've talked a lot at this table, even just today, and certainly not just today, about productivity and business investment. To what extent do you think we are in an important moment where if Canada doesn't invest in lower carbon infrastructure, that we could miss a moment of important opportunity that sets us back on some of those other metrics like productivity and business investment for a very long time and puts Canada at a structural disadvantage?
Yeah. Mr. Blakey, I would just say that the investment needed is so great. You can't do it unless it's government plus business plus civil society. There's no other way to do it. And we are at a crucial point right now because people are doing their business plans out for 10 years. That takes us to 2033. That's beyond the first time we actually do measurements. It's beyond our measurement. So it's absolutely crucial. There's not enough money in the government to do it all by itself, but it has to do something. Anne?
I agree with Lisa, and I agree with the premise of your question, Mr. Blakey. Absolutely. This is a moment not only for Canada, but it's a moment globally, as we heard last week at the UN, and we continue to hear. Absolutely, government and the private sector need to work together because at the end of the day, the amount of investment required, Lisa's absolutely right. And you see us lagging on R&D, which drives innovation. Yeah. You see us lagging in our metrics on intangible investment in material, investment in the training of the new human resources with the new skills required to drive this new green economy. So there's an awful lot of work that has to be done by governments and the private sector and civil society working together, and we better get with it.
A lot of our competitors, have industrial policy that they've set, sometimes just with business at the table, other times business and labor. How important do you think it is to have explicit industrial policy for certain strategic industries to create the kind of investor confidence we would want to see internationally for investment in Canada? I mean, we saw just in Alberta recently, there was a big veer away from what the stated policy had been prior to the election. To what extent does that kind of vacillation harm investor confidence when folks are looking at Canada as a place to invest in the new energy economy?
Thank you, MP Blakey. We are well over time, so I'll allow for a quick answer, but Lisa? Please. Yeah.
Uncertainty is bad.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lisa Raitt, for that. That was quick. That's about as quick as you can get. So we are off to we have the Conservatives, MP Howland, for 5 minutes, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to thank all the witnesses for being here today. It's my first round today, so I'll start off with Questrade. We're seeing an increase in concern for both housing affordability and Canadians struggle to afford their mortgage even now with all these interest rate hikes. And we're seeing that the increase in inflation is also causing more upward pressure on interest rates, where there's a risk of it going up again. While we need to increase the housing supply, what policy changes should government look at to address the issues of affordability for both purchasing real estate and taking out a mortgage? If you could please keep your answer brief.
Thank you, MP Howland. I'll start, and then I'm going to share this one with my colleague, Ramit. Housing affordability is a top issue, and as an industry representative today, we want to make sure that we're very clear. There's a number of cross-purpose policy and implementation challenges we've experienced, which look that they will drive costs up for the end consumer. Financing housing is the essential part of turning the idea of home ownership into there being a home to own. We're very hopeful that, in fact, the government will form the roundtable to make sure that it can keep pace with the changes that are being made and implemented right now relating to mortgages and other housing policy measures, and to ensure they understand the marketplace. I'll just invite Ramit to add a couple of additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for the question. All I would add is, there have been several proposed recent changes to policy or regulation, and while they may be well-meaning individually, we found that at times they're often in conflict with each other or could be disproportionately unfavorable to small and mid-sized financial institutions, which has the effect of limiting choice to Canadians and or increasing costs. I'll just make it tangible quickly by way of citing one example. CMHC's Advice 18, it targeted issuers of mortgage-backed securities in single-family housing. But if it goes as proposed,
sorry to cut you off. I have very limited time. I wanted to shift to Mr. Dodge. Thank you for being here. We're seeing commentary from economists at several financial institutions talk about a recession or downturn that is now all but avoidable. A strategist with Desjardins told the CBC, quote, "The path forward looks bleak." Oxford Economics is reporting the, quote, "Recession on the Canadian economy has arrived. Household debt remains high. Bankruptcies and insolvencies are up. We now see banks increasingly prepare for loan defaults, and even BMO has shut down its auto loan unit out of concerns for loan defaults." Just want to get your thoughts on what is this signaling to you?
I think we've always understood that we would need a period of essentially zero growth in order to rebalance demand and supply. What happened, we thought that a year ago. And what happened in the intervening period is we actually had stronger demand than we had anticipated. And so that period of zero growth basically got pushed back. And it's now what we now expect to see over the next 12 months or so. That's not the end of the world, I've got to say, to be able to disinflate from the levels that we were at and get back to 2% sometime, or close to 2%, sometime at the end of 2025, without a major rise in unemployment and a major disruption was really quite a trick. But yes, the next 12 months, we would not expect demand to be strong. And in fact, we need it not to be strong in order to break the expectation that inflation is going to stay high.
MP Helen, and now we're going to our final questioner. That'll be MP Weiler, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask my first question to Mr. Dodge. In your opening, you mentioned 4 key areas where the government should focus investments on, and one that we haven't spoken too much about is the last one, which is on AI and digitization. And I was speaking with a management consultant a couple months ago, and he was talking about how much further ahead a lot of businesses in Europe were in utilizing AI.
Just put on your mute, sorry.
And I just was reading a report recently that it said that only 4% of Canadian businesses are using AI. So I was hoping you might be able to expand a little bit on that 4th pillar that you talked about and how the government might be able to look at that as an area for improving our productivity.
Well, what do we try to do? We try to do it through essentially a R&D tax credit, which is at least the appropriate instrument, whether it's precisely well articulated. That's always been a question. I'm on the board of a small firm, and it certainly is critical to us in terms of making our investments in new technology. So I think it is important. But there has to be a will on the part of private industry to go ahead and do it. There has to be an attitude that the only way that we can move forward is, in fact, to be innovative, to be new things, to invent our own IP, which we can then sell to the world, rather than importing IP from the rest of the world and paying for it. So this is one where government can set a framework, but it is really up to business to pick it up. And it is, I won't say the rare business, but it's a small fraction of businesses, and always has been, and it is true in other countries as well, a small fraction of businesses that pick it up. It's not something, this is not something government, this is going to be a collective effort of the business community, and that target that Anne was talking about is really important. And until we see that start to move, it's not clear what it is that government can do other than talk about it and provide that tax incentive or the tax refund for the small guys. You need it as a refundable credit to be useful. And all I can say is my own experience with a small, struggling company that produces IP is that is a very important incentive, and we certainly use it and would do less well if it were not available.
Thank you. Just with my remaining time, I'd just like to ask, the Coalition for a Better Future, the scorecard's very useful in really being able to show the scale of the challenge that we have in Canada. But I was hoping you could provide some ideas, not just on the what, but on the how. And if you had maybe both Ms. Raitt and Ms. McClellan, if you could identify one area that you would suggest that we focus on in the next budget to increase our productivity.
Unfortunately, my colleague Lisa had to leave to do a CBC interview. But let me say, first of all, one, it's not specific, but we hear it over and over again. Why can't we collaborate in this country to achieve the economic growth, the inclusive, sustainable economic growth we all want? Canadians talk to us about the fact that they are so dispirited by the fact that different parties, different levels of government seem unable to talk in a respectful way with each other, to come up with the solutions that Canadians know and feel to meet these big challenges. So collaboration among levels of government, all three, but then collaboration with the private sector, levels of government, civil society. And yes, that's a general motherhood thing, but Canadians palpably feel that we are lacking collaboration, and they want to see it to deal with these big problems. So that is one message I would leave you with. I think otherwise, I would say that it's important, and here I speak, I suppose, directly about the Government of Canada. I think the Government of Canada has to show leadership in terms of providing both that spirit of collaboration, but some of that certainty that the private sector needs to be confident in terms of their investment going forward. Actually, what will drive the transition to a green economy, governments have to be there, absolutely, especially at the beginning, but ultimately it is private sector investment. And we need to ensure that governments, again, probably at least federal, provincial governments, collaborating and working together, provide the framework in which governments have the certainty to make the investments. And we really do need to do a better job of providing that framework, whether we call it a plan may be too specific, but a framework in which people can organize their businesses and, quite honestly, their communities.
Thank you, MP Weiler, and what a great note to finish on. I think MP Lawrence, I'm going to give you like a few seconds. I think you want to say something.
3 seconds.
Okay,
Have we confirmed the Minister of Finance's appearance?
Okay, well, we'll get. What I'd like to say right now is that on the Honourable Anne McClellan, and that was a great note to end on. The biggest challenge, I'll tell all the witnesses and the members know this full well, that we have on this committee, and we've talked about many challenges, is time, because we have these distinguished, diverse witnesses with us. We wish we can listen to all of you and hear you for a lot more time, but we just want to thank you for your testimony for our pre-budget consultation. It means a lot to have you all here with us. Thank you very much. That concludes our meeting. We're adjourned. Thank you.